They threw my suitcase on the lawn like I was trash. My mother in law spit at my feet. My husband didn't even look back. All because my womb was empty. But what they didn't know, I owned the building they lived in, and 12 others just like it. Hey, family, before I tell you how I went from their doormat to their worst nightmare, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me, have you ever been underestimated? Because this story is for everyone who's ever been treated like they were nothing. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. 5 years ago, I walked into a coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday morning. I was dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking like any other woman grabbing caffeine before work. That's where I met Andre. He was charming in that easy way some men have. Bright smile, confident but not cocky. The kind of man who opens doors and remembers your name. We started talking while waiting for our orders, and that conversation turned into exchanging numbers, which turned into dinner, which turned into love. Or at least what I thought was love. Here's what Andre didn't know about me. I wasn't just some regular woman working a regular job. Sure, I told him I was a bookkeeper, and technically that wasn't a lie. I did keep books, just not for someone else's company, for my own corporations. See, when I was 23, my grandmother passed away and left me a small duplex in a neighborhood everyone said was going nowhere. But I saw something different. I saw potential. I fixed it up, rented it out, saved every penny, and bought another property. Then another. Then another. By the time I met Andre, I was 28 years old with a real estate portfolio worth millions. But I'd learned the hard way that when men know you have money, they stop seeing you and start seeing dollar signs. So I created a different life. A modest apartment I kept for appearances. Thrift store clothes mixed in with a few nice pieces. A used car that ran perfectly fine but didn't turn heads. I wanted someone to love me for me, not for what my bank account could do for them. And Andre seemed perfect. He had his own job, his own ambitions, his own life. He came from a close family. His mother Brenda, his sister Nicole, aunts and uncles and cousins who all lived within 20 minutes of each other. Coming from a small family myself, I thought that closeness was beautiful. I thought I was gaining the family I'd always wanted. We got married after a year and a half of dating. It was a small ceremony, nothing fancy. I paid for most of it secretly, telling Andre I'd been saving up and got a good deal from a vendor who owed me a favor. That part was true. I owned the venue. But he didn't need to know that. After the wedding, we moved into his family home temporarily while we looked for our own place. That was my first mistake. You see, temporarily became 6 months, then a year, then just our life. Every time I brought up getting our own place, Andre had a reason why we should wait. His mother needed help with bills. His sister was going through a hard time. The market wasn't right. There was always something. But I told myself it was fine. I was playing the role of the humble, grateful daughter-in-law. I helped with cooking and cleaning. I went to every family dinner and birthday party. I smiled when Brenda gave me advice about everything from how to season chicken to how to keep a man happy. I bit my tongue when Nicole made little comments about my clothes or my hair or the fact that I didn't have a college degree like she did. What they didn't know was that while they saw me as beneath them, I was managing a multi-million-dollar empire from my laptop in the bedroom at night. Then came the questions about babies. It started innocently enough. 6 months into our marriage, Brenda asked when we were planning to have children. I laughed it off, said we were enjoying being newlyweds. But the questions didn't stop. They got more frequent, more pointed, more invasive. At family dinners, Brenda would ask about my cycle. She'd suggest fertility herbs and special prayers and specific doctors she'd heard about on television. Nicole would make comments about how she was ready to be an auntie, looking pointedly at me like I was personally disappointing her. And Andre? He started joining in instead of defending me. My mom has a point, he'd say. We're not getting any younger. 1 year turned into 2 years with no pregnancy. That's when things really changed. The warmth I'd felt from his family in the beginning disappeared like morning fog. Brenda stopped using my name, started calling me that woman or just her like I wasn't standing right there. Family dinners became interrogations where everyone had advice or questions or opinions about my body and what I wasn't doing right. I was doing all the cooking and cleaning in that house while working my bookkeeper job, which really meant managing my properties and investments remotely. I'd take calls in my car, talking to my business manager about deals worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, then walk back into that house and scrub toilets while Nicole sat on the couch scrolling through her phone. Andre grew distant, cold. He stopped touching me the way he used to, stopped laughing at my jokes, started staying late at work more and more often. When I suggested we both get fertility testing done, he got angry. Why would I need testing? The problem is obviously you. That's what he said to me. His wife. The woman who loved him enough to hide her entire life to make sure his feelings were real. So I went to the doctors alone. Test after test after test. Blood work, ultrasounds, procedures that were uncomfortable and invasive and sometimes painful. And you know what? Everything came back perfect. My eggs were healthy. My hormones were balanced. My body was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. The doctor looked me in my eyes and said, "You're perfectly healthy. Has your husband been tested?" That's when I knew. I knew the truth, and I knew my marriage was a lie built on blame that should have never been mine to carry. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started planning. I documented everything, every cruel comment, every time his family berated me, every moment Andre stood by and let it happen. I hired a private investigator, telling myself I just needed to know the truth about where he was going all those late nights. The truth came back in photographs and text messages. Her name was Lauren. She worked in his office, and the messages between them made me physically sick. Once I get rid of the barren one, we can start our family. That's what my husband said about me to another woman. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces that night. I cried in my car in a parking lot far from that house, where no one could see me fall apart. But while my heart was breaking, my mind was getting clear. Crystal clear. I'd been playing small for 3 years, making myself less than I was, shrinking down to fit into their small, cruel world. And for what? For a man who called me barren behind my back? For a family who treated me like a defective appliance they wanted to return to the store? I gave it 3 years total. 3 years of trying, of hoping, of believing that love could survive anything if you just held on tight enough. Then Brenda called a family meeting, not a dinner. A meeting. Like I was an employee up for review. I walked into that living room and saw aunts and uncles and cousins I barely knew sitting in a circle. They literally put me on trial. They took turns telling me I'd failed as a wife, that I was wasting Andre's prime years, that I was an embarrassment to their family. Andre sat there silent, looking at the floor. Nicole had this little smirk on her face, like she'd been waiting 3 years for this exact moment. And Brenda, she looked at me with pure disgust and said, "You've stolen enough of our son's life." That night, I lay in bed next to a man who'd stopped being my husband a long time ago, and I made my decision. I was done. Done shrinking. Done pretending. Done playing small in a life I'd made myself small to fit into. The next day, I came home from work to find my clothes in trash bags on the front lawn. Every single thing I owned, thrown out like garbage. The locks had been changed. Brenda was standing on the porch with her arms crossed like a security guard. "You're done here, yes," she said. "Pack your trash and go." Then Andre came out. My husband. The man who'd promised to love me in sickness and health for better or worse. He looked at me with cold eyes and said, "I want a divorce. I've already filed the papers. You have nothing. You are nothing. And you need to leave my family's property." Neighbors were watching. Some were filming on their phones. Nicole came out and actually laughed. "Good luck surviving without us," she called out as I started loading trash bags into my car. Brenda spit at my feet, actually spit at me like I was something disgusting on the bottom of her shoe. And I just stood there, quiet. I let them think they'd broken me. I let them think I'd be crawling back, begging for another chance. I loaded up my car with my trash bags full of clothes and I drove away while Brenda shouted insults that the whole neighborhood could hear. They thought I was going to some tiny apartment, probably with roommates, probably struggling to make rent. Instead, I drove to my penthouse on the other side of town. the one with floor to ceiling windows overlooking the city, the one Andre had never seen, never even knew existed. I walked into my real home, the one that reflected who I actually was, and I made 3 phone calls. First to my lawyer, the best divorce attorney in the state, then to my business manager, then to my private investigator. I laid everything out on my dining room table. 3 years of documented abuse, evidence of adultery, financial records showing I'd never taken a penny from Andre, and a property portfolio that would make their heads spin. I gave my lawyer one instruction: everything legal, everything clean, everything devastating. I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice. There's a difference. Within a week, divorce papers were delivered to Andre at his workplace, but here's the twist. I wasn't asking him for anything. I was offering him a settlement. $50,000 out of the goodness of my heart to help him start his new life. He called me 15 times that day. I didn't answer. He left voicemails asking where I got that kind of money, saying we needed to talk, saying maybe we'd been too hasty. His family thought I'd borrowed the money from someone, desperately trying to keep a man who didn't want me. Then Brenda started digging. She got nosy, started looking into my background more carefully than she ever had when I was just the disappointing daughter-in-law, and she found it. My tax returns, my property records, my business licenses, my net worth, $340 million. The family group chat exploded. My phone rang nonstop with calls I refused to answer. Andre showed up at my office building the next day. My office building, the one with my name on the directory as CEO and founder. Security stopped him in the lobby while he stared up at the letters spelling out my real company name. He tried to get to my floor, crying, saying he'd made a mistake, saying we could work it out. I watched him on the security cameras from my office and had him escorted out. I felt nothing but peace. But I wasn't done. See, there was still one truth that needed to come out. I sent Andre a package. Inside were my medical records from every fertility test I'd taken. Every single one showing that I was perfectly healthy and capable of having children. I attached a simple note. I was never the problem, but you never loved me enough to find out. I suggested he get tested, and he did. Low sperm count, severely low. He was the reason we couldn't conceive. The doctors told him he'd probably never be able to father children naturally. All those years of blame, all that cruelty, all that abuse, it was based on a lie he'd been too proud to investigate when his family found out. Everything fell apart. Andre lost his job because my private investigator had sent evidence of his affair to his boss, and his company had strict morality clauses in their contracts. Lauren left him the moment she realized there was no money and probably no babies either. Brenda's house went into foreclosure. Turned out she'd been living beyond her means for years. And guess who owned the mortgage company that held her loan? One of my subsidiaries. I didn't cause her foreclosure. I didn't need to. But I stopped doing what I'd been doing quietly for 3 years. Covering their shortfalls, extending grace through my companies that they never knew came from me. Nicole's business loan got called in by the bank, my bank, because she'd violated the terms of her contract. Again, not revenge, just the natural consequences of their choices finally catching up to them. The divorce was finalized within 6 months. Quick, clean, and final. I kept everything that was mine because we'd never truly merged our lives the way married people should. I started fertility treatments on my own because I realized I didn't need a husband to be a mother. I met someone new, someone who knew exactly who I was from day one, who looked at me with pride instead of shame, who celebrated my success instead of feeling threatened by it. I built a women's shelter with my money, a place for women who get thrown out of their homes with nothing, who get told they're worthless, who need a safe place to remember who they really are. I ran into Andre one last time. It was at that same coffee shop where we'd met 5 years earlier. He looked older, tired, like life had been grinding him down. He saw me and his whole face changed, hope and pain and regret all mixed together. He walked over and asked if we could talk. I let him say his piece. He apologized. He cried. He said he'd been a fool, that he loved me, that he wanted another chance. And I smiled. Not a bitter smile, but a peaceful one. I said, I hope you find what you're looking for, Andre. But it was never me you wanted. You wanted someone small and grateful and easy to control. You wanted someone to blame when life didn't go according to your plan. That was never going to be me. Not really. Goodbye. Then I walked away, and I've never looked back. So that's my story, family. The woman they threw away like trash. I was never trash. I was a diamond they were too blind to see. And here's what I learned: never shrink yourself to fit into someone else's small vision of you. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. If this story spoke to you, smash that like button. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because I've got more stories about taking your power back. And comment below, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have revealed your wealth immediately or played it like I did? I want to hear from you. Remember, you are enough. You've always been enough. The right people will see it, and the wrong people, their blindness is not your burden to carry. Now go out there and live like the powerful, worthy, incredible person you are. Until next time, stay blessed, stay powerful, and never let anyone dim your light.